Hello and welcome to Mindful Mondays. My name is Matthew Razi. I am a doctoral intern at the Grand Valley State University Counseling Center, and I am going to be hopefully leading this journey towards increased mindfulness on Mondays. So every day of the week, the Counseling Center is going to be putting out new content, and Mondays just happen to be Mindful Mondays. So that's going to be content based on what mindfulness is. We're going to be doing some practices, some exercises. This is going to be the only video in the entire series where it's just going to be kind of me talking at you and offering some education. All of the other videos, I want to offer practice because that's what I think is really important with mindfulness. It's not so much the knowing what it is, that's important and that's useful, that intellectual knowledge. But mindfulness is really best understood through doing. It's an experiential understanding that is the most meaningful with mindfulness. So why don't we start with this really important question before we begin anywhere. What is mindfulness? So that's a really big question, but a really, really important one. And it's one that I am going to offer two definitions. And the first definition is going to come from Jon Kabat-Zinn. He is a psychologist out of the University of Massachusetts and one of the creators of mindfulness-based stress reduction. So Jon Kabat-Zinn has written a lot of books on mindfulness. One of his most famous is Full Catastrophe Living, which a lot of my exercises and activities and info is going to be kind of pulled and interpreted from. So Jon Kabat-Zinn says that mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmental. So let me say that one more time. Mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. Let me offer you one more definition. This one comes from Sylvia Boorstein. She is also a psychologist and someone who has written a lot of books and done a lot of presentations on mindfulness. These are two experts in the field. I really like her definition as well, and I think it's really important to not just have one perspective, but get a couple different views and perspectives on what mindfulness is. So I'll read you Sylvia Boorstein's definition, which is that mindfulness is the aware, balanced acceptance of the present experience. It isn't any more complicated than that. It is an opening to or receiving the present moment, pleasant or unpleasant, just as it is, without either clinging to it or rejecting it. And again, I'm going to give that to you one more time because I think this is important, and sometimes repetition helps us to both understand and comprehend and also to really remember. So Sylvia Boorstein says that mindfulness is the aware, balanced acceptance of the present experience. It isn't any more complicated than that. It is an opening to or receiving the present moment, pleasant or unpleasant, just as it is, without either clinging to it or rejecting it. So, again, I want to keep these videos kind of short and sweet, but I wanted to give you those definitions, and I also want to give you a brief caveat here that what we're doing is not a spiritual practice. This is a secular guided videos here and guided exercises. Many people do choose to incorporate mindfulness into their own spiritual practice. Many of the authors and psychologists and practitioners that I'm going to be pulling from do use mindfulness in their own spiritual practice. But again, what we're presenting to you here now today is secular practice. One of the other points that I really want to emphasize before we end here today is just that this idea that there's two kind of paths towards cultivating mindfulness. And the first is formal practice, and that means what we're doing in these videos. That's going to be formal meditation, formal breathing exercises, and mindful eating, and scripted, guided exercises. When you're setting aside 5, 10, 20 minutes to do an exercise, you're doing formal practice. And then there's also the other path towards cultivating mindfulness is informal practice. And that's where a lot of both the benefits and some of the real world practice kind of comes into play. And that's being mindful just as you're going about your day. That means being mindful when you're at school, when you're doing your schoolwork. That means being mindful when you're at work or doing work. That means being mindful when you're talking to your partner or your friends or your family. Being thoughtful and careful and intentional about the words that you use when you're communicating with people, and being thoughtful and careful and intentional and mindful about the actions that you perform. So again, I'm mindful of the time here. I want to end our first video, this little brief introduction and education about what mindfulness is. And in future videos, we're going to definitely get into some of the exercises, which are going to be really cool and hopefully really meaningful to you. So again, welcome with a heartfelt welcome to Mindful Mondays, and I hope to see you again in future videos.